Welcome to the Saturday Conversation. Great to see you again. Thank you for tuning in with us. My name is Michael Anderson, been retired some 13 years now, and delighted to work with the Avon Valley Partnership, which is to the northwest of the New Forest, and with Gary Philbrick, our area dean, and a good team of both lay and clerical people. And the new animal on the block, if you like, over these last few weeks, years, months, has been the licensed lay minister. Wow. We felt we were the ministers in the old days, but now, you had to put a dog collar on to be a minister. But those times are behind us. Thank God for that, because licensed lay ministry has brought in a great deal of gifted people with a variety of gifts that the church needs. And when I speak about the Avon Valley Ministry, Avon Valley Partnership, we're talking about literally the valley that runs from the edge of Salisbury right down to the coast. And so either side of the Avon, we've got Dorset and Hampshire, and people are coming in and joining us and having fellowship with us across boundaries, which is great. And I was delighted to hear that really at a time when ministry has been coming and going, we've lost one or two people to other parishes. They've been called to higher service in one way or another. And suddenly Ruth was on the block, and we were delighted to have her with us. I'm not sure whether you're going to see her particular friend today, which is Molly, a black terrier cross, but Molly may appear. I'm not too sure about that. But the great thing I've already learned about Ruth is she comes from the Melton Mowbray Pie country. So maybe you would hear something about that. Anyway, enough of me. Ruth, hello, great to see you. And I just so pleased to have you with us today to talk about your past and your hopes for the future. Are you receiving me, Ruth?
Yes, Michael. I'm a little bit concerned that you thought of me as an animal. I wasn't sure about that, but I'm taking that you mean all licensed lay ministers. However, as you say, if I had to be an animal, I would be a little dog, like my dog. She looks very scruffy, and I've tried my best not to look too scruffy this morning.
No, I was reading last night in one of my more modern Bibles about Adam looking at all the animals and couldn't choose anything to be a partner. But I take it now that we're all animals. We're all in God's sight equal, male, female, ordained, unordained. But it's great to see you. And thank you for putting aside a time this morning. So up till now, what would you say? Tell me something about the development of your career. Tell me something about your past.
Well, unlike you, I haven't been retired quite so long, but I have been retired from my full-time social work career probably nearly 6 years now. And I went into social work via the church, which is probably quite an unusual way to do it in a way. I'm one of those people that's old enough to remember something called PER, the Professional and Executive Register, I think it was called. I was at one point in my life an out of work teacher. And having decided, and people might be shocked to hear this these days, having decided at the end of my teacher training not to go into teaching, I found myself unemployed, and a job became available in a church in Bournemouth, the church, in fact, where I have worshipped for the last 40 years. And at this point, Michael, you say, you don't look old enough, Ruth.
You don't look old enough, Ruth. You just don't
Thank
look
you.
old enough.
Well done. We're working well together.
I'm glad you actually say that you're an executive rather than an animal. That puts me completely in context. So I'm totally happy with that.
Jolly good. So as an unemployed teacher, I got a job creation project. This is in the early 80s, late 70s, for 10 months, working for this particular church as a youth and community worker. It was a fixed term, and it was just a wonderful job in so many ways. And at the end of that time, the priest who was the vicar at the time, some of you may have remembered and may know Robert Tier, who was a canon of Winchester and is now retired and living just outside Oxford. Robert decided it might be helpful to think about a future career and encouraged me to think about social work. So I was lucky enough, and it was lucky really, to get a job where I could be seconded and trained and become a professional social worker. So that's what I did for most of my life. One or two different things along the way. I worked for a charity for about 8 years, working with blind people in Dorset, a cause very close to my heart. But at the end of my career, I was a hospital social worker at Bournemouth Hospital. And you don't know me well, but I have a bit of a sense of humour. And one of the things I used to go up to people and say as they were lying in their hospital bed is, "I'm Ruth Crossland, I'm a hospital social worker, can I help you escape?" And lots of people, surprisingly, said, "Yes, please." So, yes,
Well,
there we are.
I'm glad you mentioned Robert Tier, because Robert and I and another priest were made canons together at the cathedral. And it was noticeable because it was the last time they did it in Latin. And I suspect it's because we made such a terrible job of the Latin that they said, right, now it's going to be in English from now on. So yes, good links. And another priest who was at your church, I knew in the past, we shared times together up at Old Alsford Place. Okay, let's move on. We've all done various things in life which could be exciting, scary, something you'd like to do again or not do again. Anything in your life that's been particular along those lines?
Well, in some ways, I think I can be impulsive, and most of the time it's worked out okay. Just occasionally you think, oh, probably best not to have done that. But on this occasion, on one or two occasions, I did decide that I would drive to Pisa in Italy. And I took my car and my dog, and I'd never really gone on such a trip on my own before. But having a dog, if you ever had a dog in your life, they, however big, however small they are, and my little dog is very small, they do somehow bring you confidence. And you do feel you can sort of take things on a bit more with a dog, even though Molly is the kind of dog that would run away if somebody came towards her, probably. But she and I set off in a car and drove very carefully through France to Italy, and staying at various people's places that we knew, friends that we had. And it was, when I look back, I think madness, Ruth, somewhat madness. But anyway, unfortunately or fortunately, I actually did it again in a camper van. Molly and I, about 9 months later, we went to Innsbruck in Austria, Innsbruck in Switzerland, no, Innsbruck in Austria. I'm trying to get my memory right. And we had a fantastic time. And part of it for me was, I'm a very gregarious person, very, very sociable. And part of it was kind of trying to understand whether I could actually spend that amount of time on my own, and feel comfortable with being on my own. And I have to say, it was a blessing. It was a joy. Scary, exciting, but wonderful, wonderful times, wonderful memories, and of course, photographs. I have lots of photographs. And I suppose I'm just going to say one more thing that's kind of scary and exciting, was when Bob Vernon, who was also the vicar of our church, said, "Have you ever thought of being a reader, Ruth?" Because the Readers was the title before, of course, we went into licensed lay ministry. And I said, "Don't be so silly, Bob. You're mad." And he said, "Well, no," he said, "you're a blank page." He said, "Who knows?" So I went to the interview and I thought, well, if God wants me to be a reader, it will be okay. And here I am, 13 years since I was licensed as a reader, looking at a new exciting challenge with you folks. Looking forward to it very much.
So are we, so are we. And your dog, Molly, must be the only one in Christchurch who can bark in Italian, I guess.
She wouldn't go back to Austria again. I tell you why, because on public transport, all the dogs had to be muzzled. And she's never had one, so she's not on her holiday return list, Austria.
Glad you mentioned Pisa, though. My eldest granddaughter's just come back from a year teaching in Pisa, English as a foreign language, so we got a double link there.
Oh, wonderful.
You just mentioned briefly becoming a reader, which obviously is part of your faith journey. And I gather part of your faith journey has been hobnobbing with the Catholic hierarchy. Is that right?
Well, yes. I was thinking about this as knowing that we were going to have this conversation. And I look back in my memory at one or two sort of interesting parts of my faith journey, as you would say. And funnily enough, Robert's Tear's wife, Juliet, and I were part of a diocesan trip for younger people. Cast your mind back, this is a long time ago, not now, in 1982, to go and meet the Pope. Pope John Paul II, who came to the United Kingdom, including, we went to Wales. I remember some unearthly time boarding a train at Bournemouth train station with Juliet and, in those days, the Bishop of Basingstoke, Michael Mountalo.
Yeah.
He organised our group. Off we went to Cardiff for the day, with thousands and thousands of Catholics in this rugby pitch, singing. The weather was dreadful, so we sang "Our God Reigns," and it was
as you would,
as you would, absolutely. And then when our Catholic brothers and sisters had communion, Michael Mountalo had brought communion for us, so we sat on the steps of the rugby stands, having our own Anglican communion, as it were. And it was just, as you say, wonderful, wonderful memory.
Yeah, great, really good. And you're bringing all that background and your gifts to be with us for several months or longer, I hope, however long you can stay with AVP. I got in my notes here that you've had links with the Blind Association and the Alzheimer's Society. Would you like to tell us something about, is this something you've been doing since you've retired from paid ministry, paid work?
Yes. I don't know if you're a believer in the Kairos moment, the moment of God-given opportunity. As I had retired, a friend of mine who's not actually a Christian said to me, "Have you ever thought of being a volunteer for the Alzheimer's Society? You've got nothing to do." Because when you're retired, apparently you have nothing to do.
Absolutely not, no.
I mean, and she said, "What about it, Ruth?" So we went on a training day, which was free, that the Alzheimer's Society were doing until, of course, our present situation. And it was just wonderful. And I learned to become a Dementia Friends champion. And this ties in very much with my faith and also with my vocational career, because I think social work is a vocation, really. And I noticed over the years of working as a social worker how many of the older folk were more likely to be developing dementia, and how life was taking on completely different challenges for them. And I knew that I wanted to try and help people with that and help people to understand the kind of dementia journey that people are on. And the Alzheimer's Society does a very good training session, and you then become a Dementia Friends champion if you want to, and you do talks to others. And in fact, several years ago, I came to talk to Christchurch Deanery Synod in Fordingbridge about how we might, as a community, make churches more dementia friendly. So that's something that's a real passion of mine, really, to help people understand how dementia can affect someone, and to help churches understand. I've heard horrible stories, unfortunately, of people saying, well, he can't give out the newsletter anymore because, of course, he's got bad problems with his memory. So we'll put him on one side and we'll just, ask him to just sit quietly on one side. And there needs to be a real sort of connection as to how we can encourage all sorts of folk who are differently gifted into our church communities. Because I think, we can all have a role.
Yeah.
We can all have a role.
Yeah. I think that could be a tremendous value to us as a team. We have weekly staff meetings, but if you could at some stage introduce the subject, and maybe we could meet up as a group to talk about this, because to be fair, we all have failing memories. You know, I had to remember to be on here at 10:30 this morning, and I need a nudge from my wife for that sort of thing. And obviously, when we're talking, I tend to preach extempore sometimes, and I tend to fail in my memory of things. And in some congregations, people just give me a chivvy from the pew. Ah, yes, that's the verse, or that's the word. But it's something we're almost afraid of. You can cope with a broken arm or a broken leg, but something wrong with the memory and failing memory. Have we still got something left between the ears? You know, we need some reassurance as we get older along those lines. And I think that could be something that you could bring to our benefits in a very, very positive way.
I think one of the things when I do the talks with people, and I've done a lot of talks because I enjoy it so much until our present situation. I've been to Haskins, I've been to banks, I've been to care agencies, I've been to brownies, guides, you know, anybody will have me basically. One of the things that always strikes home with people is the concern that people won't remember the detail if you go and visit someone. And what the Alzheimer's know, and I believe also and know, is that they might not remember the detail, but they'll remember whether or not they've had a good time with someone and a good experience.
Yes.
So then, you know, it's terribly sad for relatives, isn't it? Terribly difficult to go and visit someone who says she doesn't know my name anymore. If it's a close relative, it must be dreadful.
Yes.
But at least we can reassure people that people do remember whether they've had a good time with you or not such a good time, really. For a long way into their dementia journey, they're able to remember that. And I, like you, Michael, you know, none of us, our memories are as good as they were. And I don't remember sometimes the detail of things, but I can tell things. I can always know whether I've had a good time with somebody or not.
Yeah.
Or whether it's been hard work.
That's really helpful to hear you say that, because my memory immediately went back to my father's remaining years down in Barton-on-Sea in the nursing home. And when we presented him with a grandchild, he said, "Where have you come from?"
Yes.
And then he was asking, "Who are we?"
Yes.
And I used to take down pictures of the wartime aircraft that he was involved with. And I noticed that, you know, I bring these out almost like flashcards. And for a long time, he'd know the names and recognize them, but then it gradually faded. And we could see that as symptomatic of a memory. And but as you say, happy with it.
Yes.
Very encouraging.
Yes.
I'm going to bounce a last question at you, because I suspect this won't be the last time we talk like this. But you have mentioned 3 little letters in your notes for me, which is DIY. Tell me something that you've enjoyed doing on the DIY front, because if it was really practical, we might be coming your way for some help.
I wouldn't recommend you for some things, but of course, the lockdown experience has created all sorts of opportunities for some of us, hasn't it? Yeah. I've done more gardening in my life than I've ever wanted to do, because I've not long lived where I live now. But the other thing is I've done something. I mean, my new best friend is Google. And so there's always a Google video about how to do something. Yeah. And the one thing that I have done, which, you know, for me, I was quite chuffed with, I set up a water butt in the garden. And the water comes down the downpipe and it goes into the water butt. And if it's full, it goes down the drain pipe. And I think, well, who knew? Who knew I could do that?
Well done. Well done. I think that probably leads us into a totally new environment, which is very topical at the moment, which is the environment. But at that point, maybe, Ruth, I've got to let you get on with your morning and I get on with mine. We want to thank Joe for looking after us technically, which is a real gift from somebody else down south in the deanery. Ruth, thank you so much for sharing that from the heart. And I just hope that the people watching might be able to contact you in one way or another to get reassurance and hope and purpose and joy in life from what you've taught us today. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Michael.
Really appreciate it.
Can I just say, I'm just winding up the kind of commitments I have to my previous congregation and church. Sure. And Gary Philbrook and I have a date in the diary to meet which is actually about 10 days away. And then I'm coming to a church near you, as they say. And looking forward to meeting so many people in the Fordingbridge area. I don't know the area terribly well. I do know Sandy Balls because I have camped there. I do know God's Hill a bit, but a lot of the other places will be new to me. So I'm looking forward to meeting everybody who is around, really.
Yeah, we'll give you a lightning tour and introduce you to the church family up here.
Lovely.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, Michael. Thanks, Joe.
Goodbye.
Bye.